the CMC6s with MK4s as overheads on the drums. They're the only cymbal mics that I use that I don't have to EQ at all, which is always the goal. I just love them. I honestly and truly am like blown away by them every time I use them. My name's Kurt Elling. I'm an audio engineer based out of New York City. I was chief engineer at the oldest studio in New York for quite a while, Sear Sound, and now I'm freelance. Right now I'm based out of a studio called Second Take Sound. Pretty young studio, but great sounding space. There's another studio in Queens called Samurai, which beautiful room. Yeah, one of my favorites. And I've been fortunate to work at Power Station quite a lot. A lot in Studio A and a few records recently in Studio C. Unbelievable space, incredible studio. And then one of my favorite studios in the whole country, Esplanade in New Orleans. That's a converted church that it's just a spectacular place to record. It's really, really stunning. Right now, everything has been centered around jazz recordings for the most part. I just did a record with Joshua Redman at Sear Sound. I've been working with Chris Potter. A lot of stuff for Blue Note, a lot of stuff for Decca. Kurt Elling is one of my all-time favorite artists that I get to work with very regularly. We did that last recording that I did with him, we did at Electrical Audio in Chicago, which was an amazing experience to be in that room, on its own. It was my first time working for ECM with Manfred producing, and it was Joe Lovano's Trio Tapestry was the record. And Manfred sent an email, we need SCHOEPS. I said, we don't have any right now, and so we rented 2 pair. And we used 1 pair on the piano, 1 pair on, Joe has a gong setup. And I think I was about 30 minutes into the sound check when I turned around, opened my laptop, and started looking for a pair of CMC6s. The first experience, unfortunately, a little later in my career than I wish I had with them, but they absolutely blew me away. It was the most crystal clear piano sound, but honest, fully honest and warm. And I just captured everything about that piano that I've always struggled to capture. And on the gongs, just incredible tone, beautiful transient response. Really just came out really nice. So I had my own pair within maybe 2 weeks of that session. And I've used them on every single record since. It's no exaggeration, just every recording I've done, they've been on. 90% of the records I've done, you'll hear them on cymbals, on overheads. They capture so much of the attack, so much of the sizzle, and then also just maintain a lot of tone and fullness in the cymbals. They're the only cymbal mics that I use that I don't have to EQ at all, which is always the goal. But yeah, every record I try to put them on cymbals. If it's the pianist record, maybe I'll move them to piano. Room mics for strings. If I'm doing a small ensemble, string ensemble, they'll be on the violins. Woodwinds, you name it, I've tried it, and I have never been disappointed. They've been amazing on everything. With instruments like drums, with cymbals, the drum kit, and especially in jazz, and the cymbals are the driving force behind the music. And that clarity, that focus really needs to be there, and it needs to be captured properly, because it's gonna affect the decisions for everything underneath that I do, mixing and whatnot. So knowing that I've got a very clean and very honest capture is hugely important to me. The CMC6s with the MK4s is my first go-to always. I usually get pretty close to the cymbals, mostly to capture as much of that stick, like tapping the actual cymbal, as I can. And then I'll put something fun up high that's, you know, a U47, something a little sizzly and a little extra tubey, you know. But that whole drum set is really based around that honest, clean capture with the SCHOEPS. I try to balance the overheads as much as I can to center the snare as much as I can. Often that pushes the bass drum to the side, so there is a compromise that you have to make. I also I try to angle the mics slightly in, so away from the snare drum, just to try and minimize some of that bleed. You're gonna have close mics on the snare anyways. I always have a mono mic above it. You know, it's gonna get captured very cleanly regardless. So to maintain that focus on the overheads. I also really like to combine different types of it, you know, on a sax or a horn, just any horn player. I'll do a bright and a dark, and so that we have a little flexibility later. You know, usually a condenser or ribbon, that type of thing. And on something like piano, I want one super clean, honest to capture, usually, you know, NOS or RTF outside. And then I'll put a two mic in, you know, a pair of two mics in on the inside for character, you know. And then when we're mixing, I have that flexibility to say we want it to be more honest or we want it to be more fun, you know. This incredible vocalist, young jazz vocalist that's growing, this is gonna be a big star, I think, Stella Cole. So we recorded her at Power Station in Studio A. That was just an amazing project. Alan Broadbent doing all the arrangements, and he was on piano, and I used the CMC6s with MK4s as overheads on the drums for them. And then the pianist, we used a pair of CMC5s in cardioid. And we used another pair of CMC5s in Omni as a room for 12 string players. Along with, we had a Decca tree and other things set up as well. But that was, yeah, that was perfect. You know, you write to Power Station, say, send me all the SCHOEPS you got, and that's that's my method there.